So after last night, Donald Trump earns 58 delegates from his win in Arizona. Cruz, though, you know what? He could have shared those delegates in Utah, but he won almost 70% of the vote, so he gets all of those delegates as well. Joining me now to discuss it all, Daron Shaw, Mike Shields, Guy Benson, and Morgan Ortagus. Daron, let me start with you. Real quick on this poll, you know, what I did was I looked at this thing and I saw back in February, Rubio, Carson, and Jeb had 33% total. Of that 33%, the lion's share has gone to Ted Cruz. Some has gone to Kasich, and of course Trump has built his as well. But does that argue or help bolster the Cruz argument that if it was a man-on-man race, he could win?
It's a really interesting claim. I mean, like you said, about 1/3 of the vote in the last poll was going to three candidates that are no longer in the mix. And of that 1/3, 19% has gone to Cruz. 5% to Trump. So remember when Trump said after his victory on Super Tuesday 2.0 that, hey, a lot of those guys are going to come to us, you know, when these candidates dropped out? That's true. About 5% out of the 33% have. But 19% to Cruz, 7% or so to Kasich, right? That really kind of suggests that as this race settles a little bit, as some of these establishment candidates go out, there does seem to be a turn to Cruz. However, the top line of the poll is still the top line. He's still short,
right? And
he needs something else to happen in order to really make an effective run.
Yeah,
here.
He's still short, and we've already gone through a lot of states. Some people will say this is an academic argument, but Mike Shields, if indeed there is a contested convention, Cruz can go in there at least with these sort of numbers. We'll see what the rest of the states look like. It might help his argument, no?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, if you're going to go into the convention without a nominee, all the candidates are going to be making a case to the delegates of that convention as to why they should be the candidate. If you go back in history, by the way, and look at the conventions where someone has come and become the nominee because there wasn't a clear winner going into the convention, like Eisenhower, Lincoln, a lot of times the delegates chose it based on who's going to win the election in the fall. That was the thing they were looking for as they were selecting through all the candidates. So I think as you're going into the convention and there's not a clear delegate winner, there's going to be a lot of arguments that have to be made, and one of them should be that they're pretty close. I think if Trump has a massive lead, if he's only, say, 50 delegates short, he's going to be able to go and find 50 delegates in the convention hall and get over the top. If he has a big gap, then it's sort of wide open at the convention.
Of course, when Eisenhower and Lincoln were involved, guys, there was no social media. Could you imagine the tweets Lincoln would have been getting back in the day? What about Kasich? Because I'm looking at Kasich. He's hanging in there. I mean, he's hanging in there, and some are calling him a spoiler. Why is he in there? No one believes. I don't know if anyone believes that. God, do you believe he can get the nomination at a contested convention?
I think that's a real stretch, and he mathematically has no chance of winning 1237 before the convention. And when you look at this new Fox News poll, this is a blockbuster poll because it has Ted Cruz within the margin of error against Donald Trump head-to-head, and then Kasich's down there with 17%. You add Cruz and Kasich up, they're at 55% to Trump's 41%. That adds to this narrative. If we're talking about a contested convention, what is the will of the Republican electorate? Fascinating new numbers here.
I can hear folks howling right now, though, Morgan, that, come on, this is ridiculous. Donald Trump is overwhelmingly winning these, even if it's a plurality, not a majority. And the voice of the people, Guy, has been spoken, and they want Trump.
Well, it's not over, and he's not overwhelmingly winning. And if anyone overwhelmingly won last night, it was Cruz with almost 70% in Utah. I mean, clearly Trump had a big night in Arizona, which had more delegates. But this race is far from over. It should be a two-person race. I think, as you saw, you know, my former candidate came out today, Jeb Bush, supporting Ted Cruz, which I thought was unexpected and quite interesting.
It was interesting, but can we also say kind of dumb or disingenuous? I mean, these weird endorsements that he's
love
getting.
To hate on Jeb.
Because if it's Jeb or if it's Mitt Romney, they don't really like that Cruz. You know, I mean, he dogged him throughout the whole thing. He stayed in longer than he should have.
Politics make strange bedfellows.
But does it help or hurt Ted Cruz?
I think what Ted Cruz is trying to do right now is to unite the party behind him.
Do you think Ted Cruz wooed this? Did he think he wanted this endorsement?
Absolutely.
Really? And you think so too, guys?
Someone has to unite the party. If Trump's not going to unite the party, then Cruz should try to unite the party. You cannot go into a general election with the party divided, fractured, and split. I've been arguing to Trump and his people on here for the past 4 weeks, bring the party together and they will support you, but he's not doing it. So if Cruz is, good for him.
Yeah, I think the party is going to be divided, split, no matter what, and I think something's going to come out of this either akin to two new parties or someone really rolling over big time on their core values. But having said that, Daron, Kasich at 17%. I think he's lobbying to be the VP either way. He will be something of a power broker, though, if he hangs in there, won't he?
It sure looks that way. I mean, what he's clearly doing right now is he's splitting the non-Trump vote. I think he creates all sorts of problems in different pockets of the country, perhaps, states where Ted Cruz would otherwise have a chance, not only to cut Trump's delegate haul out of certain states, but maybe even to win. I don't pretend to know what game Kasich is playing. Maybe he's just a happy warrior. Maybe he's angling for a position in the Trump administration. But he is really complicating the efforts of the Republican establishment to do in Trump.
I think it might be all of the above. Mike Shields, you're the former RNC chief of staff. The party coming under tremendous amount of pressure from all angles, by the way. How do you think, is Reince doing a great job here? I know he's in an awkward position, but it just feels like no one feels like the GOP is taking control of this. And now the notion of rewriting the rules ahead of the convention has got a lot of people worried.
Well, look, I always think of the National Party a little bit like an offensive lineman in a football game. No one's paying attention to what they're doing, but if they're not doing their job right, you can't win. And I think
in this game, the quarterback's getting sacked over and over again.
Well, you've got a great Packer offensive lineman in Reince Priebus from Wisconsin who is taking it from all angles, but is the steady hand. He's a three-term chairman, which is pretty historic. He will wind up being the longest-serving chairman in the Republican Party's history. They put on a great nominating contest, and look, they're being very transparent. They're being very open with what they're doing. They're not going to rig the rules. By the way, a plurality does not get you the nomination. So the idea that you should get the nomination from a plurality means the RNC would have to rig the rules in favor of one of the candidates who didn't get a majority, and they're not going to do that either. So they're going to go to the convention and play by the rules, which means if you didn't get a majority, the delegates are going to decide it, and that's what the RNC's been about, and I think Reince has been very open about that. They haven't called balls and strikes in this election. They've let it play out, and I think that's what happens when you have a historically good chairman like Reince Priebus.